Okay, so this is really interesting. Okay, so they did this write-up on BBC. When did they do this actually? Is it dated? Oh, in 2018. Okay. Can you ever change a violent psychopath's mind? Now, there's been like disputes of using this terminology psychopath and socio and all this stuff and blah blah blah. They kind of intermix it here. And at some points it's just like I would just consider it ASPD like for what they might consider that. But then they gave like an outline of something else, and I was like, totally Trump. But I don't know if I would call him a psychopath. I would call him probably ASPD, like the same thing that everybody else has. But I don't know. We'll get to it. But they go to make our streets safer. Efforts are underway to devise new treatments for repeatedly violent offenders. But the problem is that most of the public has this problem as well, just on different scales, and a lot of them should be in prison. But even what they're trying to do, is not really fixing the problem. And this came up because of all the mass shootings. It's like a branch off of the male supremacist bullshit. And I was actually trying to explain that the things that are the same is the Bible, male supremacy, and ASPD. So it's all the same. Like it literally is. Like there's no distinct difference between those things. In fact, the person that wrote all the people that wrote in the Bible, a bunch of ASPD motherfuckers, and the I am superior, which they do get into this. I just say it, flat out as to how they think of themselves. But yeah, they have a superiority complex thing. And so they actually get into it, and I was trying to explain like why men are such a piece of shit. So it's because of what happened here in their childhood and what they were taught, right? So women may notice this. It's not a thing because we're so different. It has to do with how they were raised as kids and what they were taught as kids, right? And other women are the same way. But there's a distinct difference of the messaging to girls, right? And but they also were taught to not care about other females in a proper manner to gain the proper empathy for them. And that is a huge problem. And I've noticed this as a kid, with their bullying and everything else. And that's a whole nother topic. Somebody actually started writing up on it. Like, why do we ignore this bully culture? And I'm like, yeah, but it's all actually connected as the same thing. Because if you come out about your rape or anything like that, you're going to get bullied. It's that whole thing. But they go criminal myths. Okay, for the purpose of this article, imagine this scenario. It's a Saturday night in a busy city center pub. Feeling bored, Tony picks up an empty beer bottle on the table in front of him and weighs it in each hand. Suddenly, he smashes the bottle down on a table, gets up from his chair, and walks over to a stranger who accidentally bumped into him earlier this evening, twisting the broken bottle in his face. A friend of the injured man named Pete reacts aggressively, pushes Tony, and lashing out, when others try to restrain him, drawing more people into the fight. When the police arrive, Tony calmly takes charge of the situation, seemingly trying to smooth things over, but in fact blaming Pete. When the police subsequently try to arrest Pete, Pete explodes for a second time, this time punching a policeman in the face. Um, yeah, though this story is fictional, it serves to illustrate the difference between two types of violent offenders in our prison. The characteristics that Tony showed are those of a psychopath: cold, calculating, superficially charming, and remorseless. The violent act is thought through in advance, and the individual may derive much excitement and satisfaction from engaging in it. So, and then he works with violent offenders at the Portman Clinic, outpatient psychopathy clinic in London. Pete, on the other hand, exhibits symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, a condition characterized by impulsivity and aggression. The typical violence of the antisocial, psychopathic individual is driven by strong emotions and is impulsive or reactive. That was actually an interesting breakdown of how these people characterize and classify psychopath versus an antisocial, but technically antisocials can do that very same thing there. So I don't know. They're just, I mean, maybe it's just for the purpose of how to, I don't know. There really isn't a difference technically because I've seen them do all those things. And I kind of wanted to back off on that psychopath portion of things, but regardless, either or, they're both bad, right? But it's kind of messed up because in the first story, I mean, it's such a Johnny Depp thing. Like, every time I read these, it's like, yeah, I mean, I literally sat there and watched this type of bullshit go down, and everybody, like, they'll go and arrest, like, the other victim. But he explodes. Just, I mean, I kind of would think that he has a right to get mad there and punch the policeman because it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you get, okay, if somebody sits there and he plots something terrible on you, and then somebody does that, and then they blame you for it, and the police come and they're trying to arrest you and not the perpetrator. Because what does it say? It says he's feeling bored. Tony picks up a bottle and then he goes and he smashes the bottle on the table and goes in his face because he accidentally bumped into him earlier. Like a total accident, something that wasn't provoked or some violent, like somebody did something on purpose, right? And they're trying to call the guy who is getting pinned for the crime ASPD. See, I don't know. Like, there's things in that, but anyway, for the sake of the argument, I mean, the whatever they're going on here, they use that. Two violent men, two very different motivations, but our criminal justice system often treats them as one and the same. Although both are violent and therefore pose a risk to society, the high rates of reoffending, this may be a mistake. Studies increasingly suggest that the brains work in very different ways. This could mean that they require different types of rehabilitation if they're to be safely released back into our streets. Psychopaths seem to process information about punishment and reward differently to ordinary people. With this in mind, efforts are currently underway to devise new treatments for repeatedly violent offenders. Okay, rape is a violent offense. Okay, rape in itself is a violent offense, and you're an ASPD son of a bitch doing that. So the thing is that they're not busting them. And I just pulled up that other story where someone just put a stupid comment that I deleted. That the crime there is sexual, so it's a sexual offender, but they're not actually getting them for sexual offending, right? They're not getting them for a sexual offense. So then, therefore, then no treatment or nothing is being done for their behavior, right? Basically, it's just saying, oh, a little assault. It's not a little assault, it's a sexual assault. And it's bad for the victim, number one, but it's really bad for the perpetrator where they're not doing anything about that. So it says it was the American psychiatrist Hervey who formalized the concept of psychopath in 1941 book. Yeah, but like I said, some of this stuff is like debatable of how they're looking at it. And then like, because I've seen so many different ones that it's like, there's such a spectrum that over time, as I keep pulling them up, like they're characteristically different too, like in many ways. Mostly when we talk about Spacey, we talk about a lot, and people like Depp and then Chase Merritt. Those people, the ones that we continually bring up, they're actually like there's a lot that's the same, but then there's like a lot that's different, like in their characteristics. Like one's gonna murder and one doesn't, but one's really violent. And then while I think that Kevin's really violent, I don't know how much of violent. I don't know how violent he is, like on others, other than you hear him talking about, or victims coming out talk about how he raped them and then he got weird. Like it's more of a, his attitude is really bad. Like he's different from a Chase Merritt. Like if you put them together, like they're different. Like Kevin is more characteristically likable from the public than Chase Merritt would be because he's such an asshole. Like he's just an outright asshole and he's very classic socio. Kevin has a little bit more he knows how to play it up to the public, like saying things like, kill him with kindness, like this kind of shit. And it's actually pretty dark coming from him. So yeah, but they're still all sociopaths, like, but they're characteristically different. That's why I'm like, I don't want to call like somebody is psychopath if it's a thing where, like I said, I don't know if it's a thing where they have some other birth defect and then they're also a sociopath, like something like that, which is questionable with some of these people. And so I don't know. Like it's in question, but they're trying to differentiate a person that's more calculated, but they've all are pretty calculated. Chase is pretty calculated to sit there and go, I'm going to go to the house and do all this bullshit. So he planned it, right? Kevin's very calculated and he goes into, I guess he goes into restaurants and tries to prey on the next, young boy going in there. Whatever he does, right? He's calculated on how he goes out and, gets people. And in fact, I think even he's more impulsive too, because on some of the stories where he goes into like a spa and it's just like there's a random person, right? And then he goes right next to him and starts rubbing up on him. And the guy's just like, dude, what the hell? So impulsive, but he's both those things, calculated and impulsive. Like it's all that. So I don't know. I don't know. But it says psychopathy is diagnosed using an assessment tool that scores individuals against a series of criteria. Those above a certain threshold are officially classified as psychopaths. So here's the thing. There's a lot of people that are on this spectrum. And that's what I've been talking about too. I think all of us, like when we're kids, like you can really go back and there's some things you did that would really fit in this category until you get corrected and behaviors and develop like empathy and, all those things, however they want to go about talking about that. But everybody has done something where they didn't give a shit about somebody else and then you could have caused harm to somebody else or yourself or blah, blah, blah. I think everybody has done that. It's just, I think they look at it on the scale of like how much and, all those things. And, because I could find that problem in everybody. Like I could sit here all day and go, you. But would I classify them as somebody that I think is going to be dangerous to me? I mean, I might classify them as somebody dangerous to me if they went into government and I know that they're going to sit there and try to do things that would hurt me, right? Because they don't care about women or whatever the case. In fact, all those people that have problems with women definitely fall on this scale. But I'm just saying, like, there's things like that. But then it says psychopathy is a spectrum, and most psychopaths are not violent criminals. In fact, some are very successful in the business world. Okay, so what do you mean about violent criminals? Okay, so here's another problem to that comment. They keep saying this. It's like, okay, yeah, if you're saying they're not all going to go murder people, I agree. However, there's so many crimes that have been done on women and rapes and on other men, right? That is a violent crime. And most those people have never been in trouble for it. So when they say things like that, it's not very, there's not a lot to back it up. They're just kind of going, oh, we don't have that statistic data to go by that they're not all violent. I disagree with that. They're violent in different ways. Like it may not be like they're physically punching you, but if they're sitting there going, okay, we want all these homeless people in the street and it's like a hate crime and they all die, to me, that's a violent act. It's just not, they're not physically doing it, but they definitely harm other people by the way that they think. That's my point of view. They're kind of just disregarding that. It says, in fact, some are very successful. Like, we don't care. Like, you could be successful and be a total serial rapist and a person that hates women and does all these violent things to women. So, beating them up or, not paying them or whatever, that fits in there. So, it means they're harmful to others in some which way, shape, or form. Again, they're not all serial killers or something, but they're serial offenders. However, those that are tend to be criminally versatile, they often offend in lots of distinct categories. Among imprisoned violent offenders, a minority are psychopathic. One recent UK study put the prevalence at around 8% of male prisoners and 2% of female ones. Another estimated that 31% of violent male offenders and 11% of female ones met the criteria for psychopathy. It's important to note, though, that these are already convicted prisoners. It does not mean that the general population, of which less than 1% are classified as psychopathic, are destined to a life of crime. But as we've seen, all these rich men have been getting away with stuff, right? So if you have enough money, enough power, you could stay out of that prison system. And so I don't agree with the data on this stuff. And I agree with somebody else, though, that said that we believe that they under diagnose all these things. Absolutely. And I'm saying the reasons why, like, I think that because of, all those things I just said. But so psychopathy clearly then doesn't explain all violent crime. But once a psychopath is in prison, it is important to figure out how to better rehabilitate them. They are up to 4 times more likely to reoffend than non-psychopaths. So it says psychopaths seem relatively unfazed by punishment, which makes them very difficult to manage. And we saw this with Depp, where like when he was getting arrested, he's just laughing and he's like trying to flirt with the cops and everything. He's like, you would ask for my autograph. That big ego, the narcissistic part of ASPD. And then it says this: more prevalent is antisocial personality disorder. So they're making a distinction here between those things. And it says estimated to affect between 50 to 80% of the general prison population. And it said that searching for ASPD in prisons is looking for hay in a haystack. And that's what it looks like even on the outside to me when I start pulling it out. I thought it was so funny. Some guy was making a mockery account saying women hang out all day talking about how everybody's a sociopath. I was like, but they are. I mean, statistically, a lot of these people are. And I think that they're just overlooking the females because females, I don't think that they act much different. They are violent. Like, okay, so the threats that came to me, like a lot of the threats and this stuff, weren't even by men. They were by females wanting to beat me up. Like, I've had several, right? And it wasn't men that I'm aware of in our stuff, but it was females. So they were threatening violence on me for getting raped. I mean, could you believe this? So yeah, so those women, yes, they would fall into the category of ASPD. So, now did they go and do it? No, because I made a shit fest about all these people. I didn't keep it silent or anything like that. I let people know this person made this threat. This person made this threat. Here's that information that they made this threat. And I'll be damned, these psychotic women that were taking control of my life here were questioning the statement sent to me like they're fake or something. They're like, what's that from? Like some questionable thing. And I'm like, they emailed it to my private inbox. So I don't know, but they were trying to like act like it's not real. And that's insane. I've been getting these things for decades because I've been talking about this for decades, but I haven't had any like threat like that they were going to show up at my mailbox like that type of shit. No, because those type of people would just technically just go do it and not let me know. But yeah, making threats and telling other people to come after me, and yeah, that's ASPD all the way. And then Karen Cakes talk about it. She's gonna beat me up herself, whatever crap she's doing there, saying she's gonna beat me up if I say the word rape. Then yeah, so those women definitely, and they overlook it because they don't feel that women are a threat. And to us other women, they're major threatening. That is threatening. So any type of form of threatening violence is a threat. It doesn't matter if it's a female, male, whatever. So, but technically they're not really taught to be the way that men are. So it's kind of weird to see that. But technically, because when they're raised, they were taught to not respect themselves or other females. So that makes it easier for them to act like that. I would never do that shit. Like, it's beyond me that anybody would ever do that, mostly with somebody they don't even know. And because I could be if they think I'm crazy or anything, then I could go crazy and go blow their fucking brains out. They want to come near me, right? They don't know what I'm capable of doing, right? So I find that to be, and that's a very risky thing too, right? Where somebody feels so superior to where they put their lives at risk for doing stuff like that, right? Because that's a criminal thing to do, right? It's not a thing where you don't know it's criminal to go threaten somebody. Yeah, so I could be pretty loco. Don't get near me because I will start swinging around a fucking hammer and it's gonna be the last part of your fucking head. Really? I mean, get me on a wrong day because there's been people that have been very lucky that I let them live. I'm just saying that. I mean, I have to protect myself and I have a legal right to protect myself, but technically, I know that the laws will sit there and try to go after me for protecting myself. We have the case, the Menendez case right now, that's up in your face, where they're trying to overturn those things, and I agree with the arguments that are coming across. There was also a letter they brought up in that. Um, in regards to the dad touching him, and they're like, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, and it happened months prior before they killed the parents. And so if you viewed the case back in the day as they did, because there's still people saying they killed their parents no matter what, they should stay in prison, like they're literally saying this, and I'm like, I have a new understanding, and it's not promoting that people should kill people, but it is sort of an act of self-defense. And because of that, due to the abuses, they felt that they had to rid of their parents. And so from that argumentation, would you consider them sociopath, killer, that type of thing? They may have those issues because of the abuse, right? And some of the people that would be great to talk to is the Kevin Spacey family right there, right? Because they actually had this incident happen, and I hadn't read that, like in my younger years, I hadn't read that before because I never thought of that. Like, no matter how atrocious my parents were, I never thought, oh, I should take them out. Like, it wasn't anything like that. Um, Now I have later from the abuser in the drug ring thing that I was thinking of running him over. And so, like I related with that portion, but I'm older there. Like, it's not from my developing years where that came about. That would be horrible. Um, but it was one of the things where I was like, I can't get rid of him. The cops are letting him harm me. This and that and this and that. And then he came up by my car on a bike, and I remember chasing him down and thinking about this because that was like the only time I can ever recall ever thinking about doing something like this, because I couldn't get rid of them and they were harming me so bad. And I was like, I'm going to chase him down. So I started chasing him down, and he took off. Like, he's just lucky. Like, I probably wouldn't have done it anyway, but it was like, I wouldn't feel bad about it, Technically, does that make me a sociopath? No, absolutely not. It would have been out of self-defense. And so, but the way that the law and the public would have looked at it, they would have looked at me as some like psychotic killer, like oh my God, this would have been horrible, but it would have been me trying to do that. And then it actually came up in the case that Kim Kardashian brought up, where I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, but I didn't do it, right? So I was like, because I knew that that's not the right way to go about it. But it should have been justified if I did that, technically, in that case, yes. You guys do not know how bad this was. It was really bad. And no matter what I did or where I went, this motherfucker kept showing up, and then they kept stealing all my money, and then physical harm, and all kinds of things. It was so horrific, and I couldn't get out of the area because the cops made me stay there, and then I get kidnapped, right? Like that whole thing. So I couldn't do anything, and because I got kidnapped, I looked at the kidnappers as like a safe haven help, like type of weird thing. It's so weird how I shelved that situation. Like, I didn't even talk about it like that. But the cops arrested him later, but they didn't get him for kidnapping. So I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, as I'm going back into the hindsight of this whole thing, it's like, I don't even know that guy. Like, I really don't. Like, I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't even know his name. Like, I know the nickname he had, but he had several names. And then I met his parents, and they're propping me as like his girlfriend, and the guy is of age, and I'm like a minor. I was a minor at the time, at the beginning portion of that. And then and my dad knew about this, and nobody gets me out of it. It's an amazing thing. I was just like, I cannot believe this story at all. The guy was even plotting to like try to marry me and shit, and I was like, I'm thinking this is a big fat fucking joke. Like this, like I didn't take any, like when you're a kid, you don't really like take it seriously. And it was just ridiculous because I don't even want to get into it. It was pretty bad. And then when they go and arrest him, they go, you need to leave because we're going to let him out in about 2 to 3 days. It's like, huh? So then they didn't give me anywhere to go. They didn't arrest him for the proper thing that they should have arrested him for. They didn't ask any further questions of how I even met the guy, and what happened, the whole thing. And he's a straight up sociopath because he started stealing my money too. And the whole thing was to get away from the other people so they stopped stealing my money and doing drugs, right? They were, doing all that crap over there. And this fool starts doing it too. So he starts stealing my car, starts stealing my money. And then all those guys were calling the house, right? And they're like, where is he? And blah, blah, blah. And he took off with all my money. And then, makes up all these stories about it. Like, it was so horrible. I'm like, I cannot deal with this. And then he started becoming physical. So it says so in a minority of cases, violent offenders will meet the diagnostic criteria for both ASPD and psychopathy. So this is how they're going about it. So that's interesting. So they can have both ASPD and be a psychopath. So maybe that's some of the things we're picking up, like maybe from their definition of what they think that is, as being both those things. Because if you read a whole bunch of stories on this stuff, they differ in how they view it. So I'm just going by the people that are writing this, and so that's interesting. So, and they'll give a definition too of the differences in this other thing. Blackwood and his colleagues have identified differences in the brains of such offenders, which sets them apart from offenders with only ASPD and from healthy non-offenders. The differences are in key areas of the social brain that are involved in thinking about our social reputations and using fear to inform our behaviors. So then, psychopaths seem to process information about punishment and reward differently to ordinary people, and most children go through a phase of hitting or biting other children, but most eventually learn that this is inappropriate behavior that will be punished, right? So I talked about this, like when you're kids, like it's basically like depathifying you. Like you're basically like a total sociopath, like as a kid. Like you're like a blank slate, and you'll do all this crazy shit, and then your parents have to tell you, go, okay, when you hit other people, that hurts them and you need to care for them, right? And you shouldn't bite them, blah, blah, those things. So you like depathify, so you're not like a total socio. But neglect, like I'm thinking like just even the general like neglect of kids like would cause them to be totally psychotic without even a major abuse, just like not correcting it, just don't experience a normal range of emotions. They may see themselves as superior to their fellow prisoners and therapists. They see themselves as superior to everyone. Okay, so if you go into the Bible, right? The Bible is teaching men that they are superior to everyone. This is the worst thing that you could ever teach a kid. So there is a tail off. It's not like they were just born thinking that they're these superior pieces of shit. Like there's actually a teaching, brainwashing that's going on when they start teaching that crap to children. And it was most prevalent at, at the start of the country and everything at the beginning there. I think parents are, hopefully, like there's other parents these days that don't enforce that, but they're still picking it up. This is a problem. They're still picking that. They would tell the boy that they're God's gift to the universe. I mean, they're the leaders and everything, and women are below them. And they were here to submit to their dicks, right? That whole thing. So they gave him this message, and that's why it's not separate at all. It is definitely, and like they don't even want to point it out. It's like, no, it's together. So they do that, and then so what they're doing is they're not instilling the proper empathy and emotions that they need to have towards our gender, right? And so because of that, I keep talking about the racial part of it, because when you start doing that, they think that they're superior to everyone, and they get this big head. And it's not like they'll all be like these massive racists, but they wouldn't have problems with it. But that's kind of those things where it stems off from. So yeah, no, and it was created. So we're not sure if it was born with, or they were taught it, or some behavior like that. I go, no, 1000% it was taught, like, or from neglect and abuse and all that. But it was something that was happening in their development years. And so then psychopaths, though, seem relatively unfazed by punishment, which makes them very difficult to manage. Our experiments suggest that the key thing that characterizes psychopathy is not being able to use punishment information to shape your behavior. But should we be doing punishment? It's kind of weird, because it's like, okay, if you're a sex offender, you should be punished. But in kids, like, physical punishment is bad because it's abusive, right? Punishment in what form? Like punishment, like they should have to write their name 10 million times, whatever. I don't know. But the type of punishment then therefore can lead to this right here. So that's why I'm like, that's kind of a weird thing. So that type of punishment when they were getting as a kid, it could have been so bad that they just at some point didn't care. Like, I don't know, but I don't think they get into that portion here. They're just saying it like that. They go, our study suggests that it's not just that psychopaths are hypo responsive to punishment, but that they are processing it quite a different way. So he believes this could have an important implication for rehabilitation, and the programs could be tailored for these separate these different groups, right? Given their brains' unusual reward system, one approach might be to consider encouraging other reward activities besides reoffending, such as a hobby or a job. But he cautions it's still very, very early days to know if this would be effective. Group therapy can help individuals better understand why they behave the way they do. We're all a bunch of clusterfucks up in here. We don't care about each other. I was like, more advanced research regards interventions targeting violent offenders with ASPD. Studies have suggested that individuals struggle to read facial expressions and show others impairments in mentalization, their capacity to understand both their own and other people's actions in terms of their thoughts, feelings, wishes, beliefs, and desires. Not only could this cause them to misinterpret actions as more threatening than they are, it could also make it harder for them to regulate these emotions because they struggle to understand their own feelings. Peter Fong something, a psychoanalyst and clinical psychologist at University College London, is currently overseeing a trial of mentalization-based group therapy with violent offenders who have been released on probation, most of whom have ASPD. Each week, they meet and discuss issues that are currently important to them with the goal of introducing a more nuanced understanding of their own position and those around them. So they go, we are trying to press a kind of mentalization pause button to say, okay, hold it right there. What has actually happened here? And so mentally unpacking the events often causes the heat of an emotional situation to dissipate, reducing the urge to do something impulsively. Already, the colleagues have successfully used mentalization to help people with another disorder, borderline personality disorder, which was totally brought up in the Jeb case, which was like totally out of line. And just, but anyway, they're bringing it up here, which is characterized by emotional instability with frequent self-harm. So that's a big difference in, though you could debate this, because if you're doing things like doing drugs and then doing impulsive activities that can get you killed, that's a form of self-harm. But I think here they're being more specific, like cutting or something like that. Yeah, BPD is a whole separate thing. Like their emotions are kind of, I don't know, it's a little different, but I don't really touch on BPD. Like somebody that I might pull out that I say has ASPD may also have BPD because those things could be together, but they may also be a psychopath according to their definition here. But it really doesn't matter. Like I just pull out the person with ASPD. So they could have a million other things. They could have depression. I would almost think, this is how I think of it. I would almost think that anybody who I pull out with ASPD, they probably have other elements like that because if it's caused from like childhood abuse or something, like Corey Feldman big time. And he's a habitual liar, so and he likes to mirror like there's all these like different these other disorders in it and some tend to show that more than others. Kevin Spacey apparently does the mirroring thing and trying to pretend like he had something happen to him when it happened to his brother. And so his brother's been getting upset about that. And then people trash the brother for getting upset about it. It's like that's a typical socio thing to do is to like do things that really irritate other people. Like they don't care, right? And it irritates other people and other people that are more healthy. Like he may not be healthy, because of the environment, but like you're getting upset about it whereas he doesn't even care because it doesn't bother him like to just do that shit. So yeah, and this is one study saw improvements in mood and interpersonal functioning which could still be detected 8 years later. I would not expect that what we have discovered in a what is that word, panacea, I don't know, and will turn the lives of everyone around. But because the risk of reoffending for these individuals is so high, I think that if you could shift the needle a little bit, make it easier and safer for even a small minority of individuals to live in the community, then you will have done something that certainly from an economic and humanitarian perspective is rather important. Ta- Talking is one thing, but research in Spain are going a step further and encouraging violent offenders to experience an emotional reaction of their victims for themselves. The University of Barcelona's Mel Slater and Mom something have been working with perpetrators of domestic violence who have taken up the offer of a community rehabilitation program rather than a prison stay. A more lenient sentence is possible because it is their first offense. As part of this, the men undergo a virtual reality session in which they must embody a female avatar and encounter an aggressive male. The male criticizes their appearance and throws a telephone against the wall and then invades their personal space. It is common to watch videos or to do a role play during treatment programs, but this is more intense experience because it's a virtual reality. If you put them into a group treatment situation, there is a risk they will corrupt it. And it's almost like they're either going to do one of two things here. So I've been saying that they need to feel what they're doing to other people. However, they could be viewing that as porn. Like they're enjoying, oh, I'm making her so scared, just like this, and I'm going to do it more. They could be looking at it like that. They're such assholes that um is that going to work for them? I mean, apparently like some things have, but they said some other things in this, but they go, yeah, so if you put them into a group treatment situation, there's a risk they'll corrupt it, right? So before and after session, the offenders were tested in their ability to recognize emotions such as fear in women's faces. They're enjoying the fear in women's faces. They're trying to act like they're not recognizing it. They don't care. Like it's they actually like women being in fear. That's part of their thing. So I don't know. The way they're approaching this is almost like they're so dumb. They don't really know. They don't read the face right. I'm like, come on, dude. So it says their ability to recognize fear improved with the intervention. We think that expressing that emotion themselves in that situation helps them to understand in an implicit way what is actually going on during that kind of confrontation. But they're acting like they're doing it because they're so dumb that they don't know women's in fear of them for doing something. Come on. That's why I say, I go, everybody's definition of this is kind of weird, but I disagree with some parts and not. But anyway, there's this portion. Although they haven't shown that such changes are long lasting, other virtual reality studies suggest that they might be. For instance, later previously measured the effect of a white person's inability inhibiting a virtual black body and found that it reduced implicit racial bias as unconscious and unintentional form of racism. And this reduction remained when participants were tested a week later. It doesn't prove that the effect would hold for gender violence, but at least points in that direction. Okay, so I'm correct in what I'm saying about MS, okay? So MS is just the way that these men view themselves, right? So they're talking about them feeling that they're superior. So it started off, it wasn't from racism. Racism is a branch off of MS. So the way that they view our gender is that they're above our gender, right? It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or anything about this, right? So that's how they do it. So they're having the most problem right there, which would be totally understandable because that's the branch off. Now, there's some people who may be racist for, I mean, a number of reasons, right? Maybe it's not even a very conscious thing. It could be, people just saying very ignorant stuff, all these different things. And then some hold these other conscious ideology, like their whole viewpoint on, black people are beneath me and this and blah, blah, blah. But then it would almost seem that that would be an easier thing to try to tackle. However, here's the problem with that. They can't tackle the female portion of it. So no matter what, even if they could treat people of color better, um, they're still going to shit all over women of color, right? That's not going to change. Like the way that they're being towards women of color is not going to change, right? Because they can't get past the female portion, the gender portion. And that's what I keep saying in this breakdown. Because here it's kind of clearly kind of showing that they can tackle that little portion right there, but they can't tackle the gender portion. And that's how they see themselves in the world, as being superior to our gender, right? That's the core. That's the core of MS. But again, they don't bring up the Bible's teaching of that MS, right? And you're basically being taught to be a psychopath. So that's what they need to stop. So that, I mean, by the time they're this age where they're going through these therapies, it's like beyond fixable, right? They're trying to fix it, but it's beyond that point where you should have made sure in their developing years that this didn't happen, regardless of how it came about, right? Whether such empathy cultivating approaches would work for psychopaths is less clear. Talking treatment required motivation, collaboration, and emotional engagement, but psychopaths don't experience a normal range of emotions. They may see themselves as superior to their fellow prisoners and therapists and mock or undermine them in other ways. If you put them in a group treatment situation, there's a risk they will corrupt it. They are highly problematic to manage. Now, who do you think of when they say this? Because to me, right away, I thought of Trump. Like right away, Trump. I can think of some other people too, but Trump particularly, because he always mocks everybody. People he claims he likes, people who claims he starts mocking them. And then everybody starts going along with it, and then they corrupt the group, right? Like totally. Like I was like, the clear cut like definition of a person that I could think of for that is Trump, like right off the bat. And they're calling him a psychopath. And I was pointing out the strange thing about Trump was that a new character came out. And I go, that's fucking weird. I've never heard him talk like that. That's what made it I think more disturbing. And then you question, like, are you just doing this for, the sake of just getting, to become a president, right? Because and then Howard Stern was like trying to make all these. Howard Stern has a problem. He knows he has a problem, and he's open about his problem. And I'm thankful that he's open about his problem, because it helps a little bit in this whole conversation. And it's like, I'm aware I have this problem, and I have a problem having empathy for other women and other people, whatever his bullshit is, right? I don't know if they clinically called him a psychopath. He may be. He's kind of a likable psychopath. Um, but he has major problems. And I noticed these problems from way back when because he didn't really care. Like he would say things and it's like he doesn't give a shit, right? Like, and they're harmful to other people, right? And then he makes fun of them, whatever. And I think a lot of us have done some of these things, but not to the extent of him. Like there was a whole thing to this. So and then he could talk to people and then be very charismatic and likable. And I've heard people keep saying Depp is so nice. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. He's still a sociopath. And so Howard was even talking about it. He's like, I'm going through therapy and I still am not fixed from my problems. And then he was attacking Don Lemon, right? Where they were trying to say like, oh, you just got fixed overnight. That's impossible. So he knows whatever treatment he's getting, like he knows what's going on. Cause I noticed that and I go, oh yeah. So he's actually pointing out all the other sociopaths and psychopaths out here. Cause even with the Depp thing, he's like, this is ridiculous, so he knows. And 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 he's not always right. He's sometimes really horrible, right? He's come out and he knows it. That's the thing because he's talking to somebody. He's talking to a professional. And so I'm just kind of watching like how he's acting going through that. I don't know if he'll ever be perfect. It's one of those things where it's like he's aware of his problem, but he's trying to work on it, and that's the best you could wish for because at least he's trying to correct like or at least act better, even though he may not feel a way, but act better than what he has. And then people knock him for, not doing certain things. But me, I notice with him, he sympathizes so much though with other ASPD guys and other psychopaths because that's how he is, right? So he associates him, he'll see himself in those guys. And so when he starts doing like those things with like Billy Corgan and shit, it's like, oh yeah, I totally relate with the, childhood thing because I'm sure they had maybe they had similar, some bullshit. And so then, but then he totally disregards that Billy did all these other horrible things to other people. And then, so he doesn't want to bring it up or something. It's like, no, you should bring that up because that's kind of the tail off from those portions, right? So where Howard became kind of horrible there. And then Billy became a perpetrator in other ways, right? And it's important to bring that up instead of doing this whole like violin story of, oh, I was abused. It's like, dude, but then what happened after? And so I've talked about some of our things, but it could have been way worse. There wasn't like these like really horrific things that I did or something and I harmed all these people and all this stuff, but there were incidents where like I could have acted better and they're just like things like that. And luckily, a lot of those things were really corrected in the early teen and early 20, like right around there, like a lot of that corrected. And it was just from like massive abuse out here, that whole other thing. And it's kind of like a force in your face. Like, this is all bad. Like, I knew it was bad. It's just all bad. And then the dad portion was still lingering. And then somebody mentioned to me one day, I don't know, I was talking about his bullshit, and then somebody finally goes, that's horrific that they said those things, like some other thing, like they brought something to my attention where I just didn't think about it in a certain way. And then and then really confronting that they're just straight up, um he may be a psychopath, yeah. And for doing that type of shit, yeah, like it's not even, I shouldn't even be, it's not, it doesn't even seem like it be a debatable thing because it was like he reminds me of Norm from the movie Psycho. I mean, the way he was being like the whole time, and it's just me trying to appease him. So it's that whole dynamic there. And no matter what you do, you'll never make them happy. It's just they put you in that position, and then if you don't, then they punish you. And then yeah, it was really horrible. And then he's controlling, right? He's controlling my life and then pretending like he's not. And then saying he's going to abuse me, it just is a horrible thing. It was a really horrible thing. And so eventually I had to get out of that situation because it was like he's so needy, like acting like a jilted girlfriend, boyfriend thing, and I was like, this is my dad. Like, that's kind of gross, dude. He's like, you don't spend time with me. It's like, I'm fucking busy, dude. I got a fucking music industry shit I gotta do here. You're not paying for it. I gotta fucking work. You're the one with money. So why are you not driving out here visiting me and supporting me? You know, is that whole thing. You're the one that dumped me out here. So, you know, it turns into this thing. I want you to drive across the country to cover Sarah. It's like, fuck you. You know, you need to come here. Like they were doing that and putting a strain on my finances to go do those things. And then it's not enough, right? Like, it was like that. So yeah, no, I could have turned out worse, you know, depending on the type of thing there. But no, luckily no. They may see themselves as superior to their fellow prisoners and therapists. So who sees themselves as superior to others? Rich people, right? Rich people have this problem. They have ASPD. They have a problem as seeing other people as being equals. I try to bring them down to earth, okay? And they have a very hard time because it's something from their childhood. Luckily for me, I still had a problem. Like I said, I still had problems. I think all kids would have problems with this, like where, like, if you didn't go through a situation like being poor, right? To really grasp that topic as a kid is like way too advanced. I honestly believe that's just too advanced to really grasp that issue. But they could have grasped some of it to not pick on kids that were poor in school, right? I never did that. My problem was I thought in my brain, because they didn't really go into, I mean, like I knew there was poverty. Like you knew like in Africa these kids were starving. Like you saw the commercials, but they didn't really talk about um, too much of welfare. Like, I don't really know if any of my friends were on welfare. They might have got some state things, but I didn't even look at that at all. Like, I just saw them as my friends, and I went to their house, and I would notice like they had a smaller house than us, and I didn't, it was me. I didn't think twice about it. And I could be annoying, I guess, to a person like that, right? If they are struggling and they're not openly talking about them struggling. And I'm just in here like, yeah, my dad bought me a car and, fucking, why aren't your parents doing it? Isn't that annoying? That's annoying. It's just me being ignorant and out of touch and not caring about. I mean, it's not caring. It's like I didn't even think about it. It's like I just didn't even think about it until later. But I don't know. Like I'm kind of making something into this where nobody said anything about it as children, but I was thinking about it later, like, oh, maybe I mean I would probably be annoying going on like that. Um, but I always bought them things. Like they could have came to me and been like, I really want that shirt, but my mom won't buy it for me, or I don't know. They could have said anything like that, and I would have just went and bought it for them without even a thought. Like I would have, I don't know, taken money from my dad. I don't know. I would have done something, like it wouldn't even have phased me, and I had that problem too, where I would be overly nice, overly like that's how I viewed it, where people took advantage of it. So it's like, oh, you need something? I will do it for you. Oh, you want me to wake up in the middle of the night and drive 10 million miles to go get you? Oh, sure. Yeah, that was me. So then, like, people abuse that and they don't see themselves as abusers, and they abuse me by using me for my car all the time to want to go to parties around town that I didn't want to go to. I mean, I would go anywhere where they wanted to go to. It didn't, it's just like we're going to go do something, but they weren't really my ideas to go do those things, and then bad things happen at those places, yeah, because of their choices of people that I didn't know who they were. And so, yeah, I mean, like you look at it and go, would they have called you if they could have called somebody else? Maybe not, you know? So, those are some of the issues that I have outside of bullshit like this. But they go, yeah, so Trump would fit into that psychopath definition that they wrote there. So in his book, they describe a sociopath, psychopath, the history of preying on vulnerable young women and abusing their children. He was transferred to the probation hostel where Blumenthal worked, and he is one of the most charming and manipulative people I've ever met. His name is Johnny Depp. Yeah. He's like, a month later, Sid absconded with Hostel's cleaner, a seemingly stable and reliable woman. Okay. She had been warned about him. Studies indicate that psychopathy does have an inherited component. So, like I said, this has been in debate, and I can't really say because of the spectrums of all these things. It's like, are we correct? Are we not correct? Are they? And they vary, and some versions of their definition here is different from others, and there is people that are very interested in the research, and some of the people that are looking into it probably have these same things. Um, I wouldn't want to write off treatment completely because most current programs are quite basic and a lot of work is going into this area. But these people need a long time to get better and they need to choose to do the treatment themselves. Yeah. And I think one also has to accept that there are some people who are treatment resistant and are extremely difficult to reach. Um, maybe in the okay, wait, there's only a little bit left, right? More hope may lie in spotting young people with psychopathic traits in order to change the trajectory of their development. Yes, yes, that's what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying. Because the development years are the most important and then it becomes hardwired, right? So I was saying if you could just get in there early enough, and they didn't want to diagnose them though as kids. And I'm like, but that's when this happens. Like, you want to get it before this happens because by the time that they're like past 8 or whatever the age, I don't know what they're going to say here about it. I don't think they even talk about that. But once they get past a certain age, like into their teen years, it's like too late. Like, it's like this hardwired thing. And then some additional things have happened in those teen years, which just makes it even way worse. And then you'll start seeing these school shootings, right? Like, that's one portion that's coming out of this actually, and that's why I said it's connected. So we finally am getting somewhere with what's going on there. So I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. So then because also what's happening here is their coping skills are so terrible that the Elliot Rogers ones, right? So, oh my God, there was no portion of that guy's thinking, his logic and reasoning or anything about how he thought that was even healthy. Like, it was so out of this world, like the way how he thought just generally, that there's no way in hell that nobody noticed this. So the only way that that can happen is if their parents are totally completely off kilter as well, and or they completely ignored him. So that whole like thing right there, because the way he's talking and thinking and writing is so it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, it's not, it wasn't, the programming was so bad that no matter what, it would have went somewhere bad. Like, he either would have just done that to himself or been a major criminal just generally. But it was so, the coping skills was not there. Like, the normal healthy anything. There was nothing healthy in his brain. It was crazy when this guy was doing all the clips, like reading his private stuff and all that stuff. I was like, that dude. And people are laughing at it. And then there were some people that were relating to it. And I'm like, if you're relating to that, you probably should go see a therapist because nobody should be thinking in that way. It's so warped. It's out of this world. Studies indicate that psychopathy does have an inheritant component and that children with high levels of so-called callous, unemotional traits are at high risk of becoming psychopathic adults. And the idea that psychopathy can be diagnosed in childhood remains controversial. They need to. I'm like raising my hand here going, they need to, they have to, they have to. And you know what? What's the worst of this, right? So let's say that they find a kid and let's say they're kind of off and they have something else. What is the worst of the treatment of trying to get them to have proper emotions towards other people and self and all these other things, right? There wouldn't be a negative, I can't imagine there would be a negative impact on the kid if they thought they were at high risk to be a psychopath, right? It would just be them getting healthy treatment, right? And then if they weren't, great, right? It doesn't do anything bad. It's just if they were and it helps, then you stop, this kind of bullshit. So I'm not against kids should get therapy anyway. Like I had therapy, we all had therapy when we were kids, like our family did, because they're a bunch of idiots. But we had to do it, so it wasn't taboo in our family. So I never even thought of it as being taboo. It was so weird that everybody else was acting that way. I didn't have a problem with it. And then I go and then I tell people I went, and then they started treating me like I was psychotic. I was like, that's weird. I was like, that we never had that problem in our family. Like they went, they were terrible when they went, but that wasn't an issue. I mean, it wasn't something that you would be ashamed about. Like it's just, I don't know. Everybody's in a different universe. And I would not trust anybody who would sit there and mock therapy. That's another indication that there's probably something wrong with that person, and I would steer clear, because they have problem. Like everybody has problems. So like who couldn't benefit from therapy just generally, right? So, be it a stressful situation happen, maybe you have low self-esteem, maybe you're self-harming, maybe you have an addiction problem, like a million things, right? Who wouldn't? And any person that thinks they're above it is starting to fit in that psychopath category, right? Where they think they're superior to something of help, right? Um, or and those people making fun of other people that went, that's another thing. So I don't know. It says, but evidence shows that there are clear risk factors, and both psychopathy and ASPD are also associated with a history of neglect and abuse in childhood. Yep, everything I've been saying. But they put it together, psychopathy and ASPD. I still see it as all ASPD, but like it's just like the spectrum. Like I wouldn't change like the way I'm viewing it mentally is like when I go through these cases, I'm seeing a spectrum. So it's like I would just say what they're considering psychopathy, just like a more extreme end of ASPD. That's how I view it. Maybe that's correct or incorrect, and maybe, but like even though they're seeing the changes like in like the brain or whatever, like that would be like the worst like outcome of the ASPD. That's how I look at it, but again, I don't know. Like, or it's that they have birth I don't want to see defects. Like, they have some type of genetic birth thing, and then it's in addition with that. I don't know, you guys, so I don't know if they're correct. They could be correct. Trump for sure. I like Trump for sure. Like I said, he had a whole new character. I was like, what the hell is that? It was a whole nother character that popped out. Now I've noticed the third character, because the sexual assault character, that one, that's another monster. That's like a hidden monster. Like everybody seems to, like everybody in the background that had that happen to them knew about that monster, but in public, like the general public, doesn't know about that monster. Even when they were saying, I'm trying to how to explain it, because these are different characters. They're different characters. The sexual predator is a different character. The president thing is a different character, and the book guy is a different character. Those are three different characters that we pulled out now out of Trump's fucking body. Like, what the hell is that? And they're all monstrous, right? The TV one, it's weird because you're looking at it as entertainment, so you're not really going, that's really his personality. I mean, I don't know. Like I just didn't think about it that deeply. And then you knew the book character, right? The book guy is similar to the TV character, so I didn't really see those two things differently, but the book was just ridiculous, right? Like his books that he does. And it's just like, I don't understand like why anybody would be depressed and upset for losing millions of dollars. Like, my God, I just go and get it again. And debt is totally great, right? Going into debt, me being in the minus like $5 million is like a wonderful thing. That's what he said. I was like, are you psychotic? Yeah. But you think he's just talking shit, like just being overly arrogant, like that arrogant thing, but just, I don't know. Like, I didn't know how to take it then. Like, when I was reading it, I just kind of like, whatever, whatever, whatever. You're not thinking, oh, he's this monstrous, like, sexual predator. He's gonna go sit there and be totally racist and fucking try to destroy the world. And then start trying to like, we're watching him manipulate people, right? Like, just flat out. Oh, public. It's all this bullshit. All this, but you know what I mean? Yeah, and then they're talking about his characteristics in here actually perfectly as a psychopath. They pinned him as a psychopath. That's what I'm saying. That's these people right here. Regardless if it's ASPD or a psycho, um, he fits that problem where you can't fix him. And disturbing that Howard tried to minimize him, but it's understandable now with Howard and treatment and stuff why he was doing that. Like, it's you're both fucked up, but Howard's not as bad as him. Like, not on any level. Like, Howard's Howard. Like, I don't know if he has any different personalities. Trump has different characters. Cause I know people were talking about it, going, I didn't know nothing like that when they talked to him. Yeah, they're different. They're different characters. Well, they would consider those masks or whatever. They're different. They're weird. It's fucking weird. But yeah, he has that. When was he this big Jesus freak? Never. I was like, what? I was like the whole time, like I was following him and stuff, and then randomly when he started running for president, he starts going in this full God mode, and I'm like, huh? Because that would have been annoying to me, you guys. It annoys me to no end. So I would have noticed it, or at least some of it, and then no, and then all of a sudden he's off with, Jesus Christ, because he knows this is the shitty part, and I knew it was fake. But he knows that the country still has a Christian majority, right? So what he wants to do when he was manipulating everybody is manipulate that group of people to go and vote for him. That's it. That personality was not there ever. I never seen it. And I was sitting there, I'm so annoyed by this that I was like, when was he Christian? He's an idiot. He can't even cite anything from the Bible. And I had to do my studies, right? And go through the whole, shebang of that crap. So I'm sitting there like, and they're just eating it up. They're just eating it up. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Same with the Depp thing. It was like, Howard and everybody else that going on about it. It's just like, yeah, we're sitting back going, obvious, obvious, sociopath, obvious. He's classic. So it wasn't even like he's a hard one to figure out. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I never read his background until, this other stuff came up. And I was like, holy shit, this dude's fucked up. And but then what happened was they kept asking the women. I'm like, the women are fucked up. Did we go into their backgrounds? They have ASPD. I was like, because you're looking at their stuff too. And I was like, oh, one of them that hangs out with all the child rapists in town. Okay, that makes sense. So that's why she would defend him, right? So you look at they acted like because the women were standing up for it. And I go, you guys don't even know that those women could actually be more abusive than Johnny Depp. And that by them saying, they could say something like, oh, he hit me, and then he's gonna turn around because they're both clusterfucks, and he'll turn around and go, you beat my ass when blah blah, you know what I mean? Like, the dynamics there are not going to be good. So they were all problematic because I was looking at them too. And then Winona Ryder obviously was like a minor, regardless of what their state laws over there. She's like a kid, so it was like she's still stuck in that bullshit. But I didn't want to hear from her. But the other ones that were older and they were doing drugs with them, then they all hung out with all the child rapists in town. Billy Corgan, Mr. Kitties, and Marilyn Manson. And so they were doing pills and drugs together and whatever. I don't know, some bullshit, because Billy was talking about these parties at his fucking McMansion in the 90s. And I'm like, so grateful that I didn't run into this crowd. Like, I don't know how I missed this crowd because There were some portions here where I could have. I don't know, but that I'm just glad. I'm just saying that because it could have happened, and somehow I got lucky and missed all those people over there. And we didn't miss the other groups of trash people though. But oh my god, me being around Mr. Kitties would not go well. Because I didn't like him in the 90s, and then seeing all how he was being in the rest of that portion of it, um, yeah, me and those type of socios don't mix. It's like oil and water, right? Because like I don't like them because they act like that, and they keep trying to pull shit on me because they're sociopaths, and it just would not end well. It would not end well. I was like, it just would not end well. I was just like, I don't even want to imagine me in the same room with that guy. And while emotionally reactive children tend to respond well to firm boundaries, unemotional children are less responsive. And that's why interventions could help. Recent research suggests that they may be more susceptible to interventions that focus on reinforcing positive behavior rather than punishing bad behavior, which um, okay, so this chimes with Blackstock's findings in adult psychopaths. Yeah, there's a lot of people that do these different studies and stuff. It's like, yeah, like, okay, so here's these two kids, right? This kid's all crying and shit. This would be like me over here. I'm gonna fuck with you, kid. I'm gonna fuck with you. Like, I was like, no, I wouldn't laugh at the kids crying. I actually felt bad. Like, anytime, like, okay, it'd be like the kid, like, I would be this kid going, okay, kid, I'm gonna tell you to go spit on that fucking door right there. That was me, like the plotter. And then, like, the kid would do it, and we're all laughing. Like, we're not thinking anybody's gonna get busted or anything like that, but we know it's wrong, right? But we do know that much. But then what happens is, like, then whoever owns the car, like our babysitter, comes back, sees spit all over the door because this actually really happened. And I wasn't the only one egging it on, but I'm sure it was my idea. And because I'm the more intelligent one of all these kids, it's not a good thing. Um, but I'm not thinking anybody's gonna get. I don't know. We just didn't think about getting busted or anything, but we knew it was wrong to do. Don't ask me why I told this kid to do that. So this little boy does it, and so her kids, the babysitter's kids, is telling him to do it now because I started it. And then all of a sudden the babysitter comes back, and then she sees the spit on the door, and then they go, who did it? And him. I was like, him. So then he gets way busted, dude, and he's crying and all this shit. And then I felt so bad. Like, I actually felt bad. It wasn't a thing where I was like laughing and I'm like, ha ha ha, ha this kid got busted. I was like, oh shit, dude, that's not right. But you're not going to say anything because you don't want to get in trouble either. So I was like, I'm never doing that again. And I didn't. I didn't. Like, that was horrible. And then now I feel guilty, and that kid's probably like forever like traumatized by the horribleness of me. So, but yeah, that's normal. It wouldn't be normal if I kept doing that and I kept plotting and telling people to do these horrible things all the time. Like, I would be a Hitler, right? Doing that kind of shit. But that was normal, and we were really little, like these ages, like that. I was like, oh my God. So that's why I said, I go, you could actually think about the time that you were once a sociopath. Like, as a kid, and you did these, like, things, and then people did horrible things to me, right? I'm just talking about the things that I did to others. But yeah, they did a lot of horrible things to me too. So, um, going into this area. But if they're not corrected, this little kid's gonna be a shit fuck. Right here, this one right here. He's gonna enjoy traumatizing men and women, maybe a bunch of boys. He's gonna be that one in the locker room that's like, I got a broom. That's gonna be that kid. But you have to tackle it when they're doing it. But if you don't, bad, bad, bad things, or they encourage it. I've seen parents have been encouraging this. So, yeah. And then we get them at school, and then they're raping us all. Okay, so then if you could build that part of the brain that wants the sorts of rewards you get from pleasing other people rather than getting what you want, then you've probably got a better chance of success. Such children also show deficits in the ability to read others' emotional states, but Australian research suggests that this skill may be improved by directing them to look at the eyes of others, which may boost empathy and emotional bonding. I don't look at people's eyes too much. I think people are creepy as fuck, dude. I don't like it. I could be autistic, who knows? But I don't like it. I mean, I will at times, but people I don't trust or like, or I don't feel comfortable around, I most times won't look at them. I listen to that. I feel like I actually am able to, I feel, there's another thing to it. I feel, like I can't focus on what they're saying, by looking at them. Like I could be, trying to think of how to explain that. I can listen better when I'm not looking at them. That's the best I could say it. Okay, so the that's why earlier. So it doesn't have anything to do with my empathy with them. And yeah, I don't want an emotional bonding with them for sure. So a lot of these people know. Look me in the eyes. That's like, you fucking creep, get out of here. Like sort of things like that. Early intervention is key. The brain is more malleable during childhood. Yes. This has its own challenges as these children aren't necessarily the ones who pass through a child psychologist door. The kids that often get referred are the ones who are reacting, throwing things, kicking people, shouting, getting into fights. Callous, unemotional children, on the other hand, are sometimes referred to as happy aggressives because they seem unfazed by violence. How crazy is that? Okay, so the growing evidence that violent offenders aren't one and the same clearly demands a more nuanced approach. Part of the challenge is identifying the individuals who are most likely to benefit from treatment and channeling resources into supporting their efforts to change. There may be individuals who are beyond redemption, but many others may be within reach. I do believe that biology is malleable, and I would rather not give up on people. Why are they not dealing with targeting kids? But they can't if the parents are teaching them to be superior pieces of shit, right? That's an addition, but they didn't bring it up not once in here about that Bible shit and where that's coming from. And it's important, just the general religious stuff, because like anytime they're like telling boys like you're born as a special fucking thing to, this and that, and you're above everyone else, above our gender, which that's the biggest area where they can't fix, right? Which is an obvious reason why they can't fix that. And that's not a genetic thing. That is not a genetic thing. That is a taught thing. So what's your guys' thoughts on this? I have my opinions on it. These people have various different opinions. You see as they break it down to different people that write stuff. What do you guys think on this stuff? Would you call? I know if I ask this, if I'm like, do you think Trump is a psychopath or a sociopath? Everybody's gonna say psycho. I know they're going to, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I would say for sure ASPD, but he may have both, right? According to this other thing, he could have both. And maybe that's the thing, as I'm picking up but he has fucking characters. He has 4 different characters. He probably has a whole bunch of characters in that fucking head of his. Whatever he needs to be in the moment is who he becomes. Just like these actors. Are all the actors a bunch of sociopaths, psychopaths, whatever? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I just think he's a great example because it's like he has that ability to be he has that ability to manipulate and be nice to people to where they're manipulated enough to sit there and go, he's the greatest guy in the world. That shit going on. Kevin too, though. Kevin, I don't even understand the Kevin thing because I'm like, Kevin is an obvious predator. Like, why would you even question this, at all? Like, it's so obvious to me because I go through all this stuff all the time, and he knows it. He knows it, and he slipped up with this bullshit because it showed that he had some kind of emotion, but then he kicked it out. I was like, okay, wait a minute. are you, and he's not a stupid guy. Like I keep saying, he's not a stupid guy, but he, when the victim came out and said something, it seemed like for a moment he actually had some feelings. It's either that he totally fucked up in what he said, but it kind of came off like, I want to say that I'm sorry if I did that. Like he didn't want to hurt him because he said he respected it or whatever the bullshit was, which is kind of odd coming from him, right? Like the other victims, like he's, whatever, whatever. So it kind of came out and then it got him in trouble. Then they go into court. And then after that, he's like, I'm going to never say sorry for something I never did again. Like some bullshit, right? Then he brings it back. So him, he knows what he did. No, he absolutely does. He does. He does. And then he tried to manipulate everybody to say because he's gay, that's why he raped some kids. It's like, dude, that's not why you did any of that. You raped some kids because your dad or somebody may have done that to you, or you witnessed it, or you became your dad to go rape other kids, whatever, 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 right? Like something in that.